Hello and welcome to a brand new installment of the Nintendo News Report for Thursday, March 29th, 2018. Finally, it's coming in going out like a lamb, apparently. I'm your host, Donald Terriel. Alex is on assignment tonight, and I'm joined by Detective Pikachu and a couple of Nintendo World Report's finest to discuss some pretty interesting news that happened this week. First up, of course, is our regular Justin Brube. Hello, Justin.
Hello, Donald, and everyone watching or listening.
Yes, and also joined tonight by, given some of the news, we felt it better to get an RPG specialist on the line, and who better than the proprietor of the Thirsty Mage himself, David Lloyd.
Evening, Donald and Justin.
Yes. Yeah. Anything else to show off or show and tell before we get into the news of the week here?
I'm not enough, Donald.
Not unless you really want to see the Pez dispenser like up close, like this close, like.
Well, I mean, Easter is Sunday, so we may as well get the candy out of the way early. Yeah. But we'll
show off around me right now, anyway. Unless you want to see weird things like Animal Crossing amiibo boxes and other things, promotional flyers for plush from Little Buddy.
I'm pretty sure they were giving away those Animal Crossing amiibos at the local Walmart.
Yeah, Toys R Us too.
The only thing in video games that's any better than 5% off right now at Toys R Us. Please get rid of these. Nobody else will. Yeah. But of course, we are gathered here to talk about the news. So let's kick off with probably the biggest news of the week, and going at it from two directions here. As Square Enix this week finally dropped the veil on a press event that happened in Japan last month, which featured the first English language previews of Dragon Quest XI, which, as it turns out, is coming to PS4 and Steam in September of this year. The Switch version coming in 2019 or later because it's still in development. And the 3DS version, which came out in Japan last year, is not getting localized. So Nintendo fans will have to wait quite a while, it seems, to get their hands on Dragon Quest XI, even though like the last 4 Dragon Quest main games have come out on Nintendo systems and been pretty successful, all things considered.
And many of them have been published by Nintendo.
Not so successful in the West, though.
Yeah, and I think that's a lot of the reason why they're holding off on the Switch version, that or the prion disease that has infected Square and Eidos for the better part of a couple of years has finally infected the Enix side of Square Enix, because you might recall that Dragon Quest XI was literally the first Switch game announced back when it was still the NX, like a full year and a half before the initial system reveal.
But they took that back.
Yeah, they walked it back a bit, but I mean, Dragon Quest X did come out on the Switch in Japan. Of course, we'll never see it, because who would pay for a Dragon Quest MMO in North America besides probably me? But yeah, so as far as the Switch version goes, like, I think where they're going with this is that Square Enix sees that the Switch is extremely successful. But I don't think they've, like, aside from like Spelunker Party, I don't think they've published anything directly on the Switch as of yet. And even things like Octopath and World Ends With You Final Remix, that's all being published by Nintendo again, much like most of their 3DS lineup, aside from like Theater Rhythm and Final Fantasy Explorers. So
did you mention Builders?
Yeah, that was okay. Nintendo published as well here, outside Japan. But so, do we want to get into the conspiracy theories about why the Switch version is still so delayed, or are we just accepting that they're going with the most popular platforms worldwide, which to this point would still be the PlayStation 4 and Steam?
I mean, I don't know if it would take more effort to optimize it on the Switch, because they're probably taking the PS4 version and having to downgrade it a bit to match the Switch's processing power. Maybe you know more about that, but That's to me what it seems like, because I doubt they're bringing the 3DS version over to Switch.
Well, wasn't some of the games that were using the Unreal 4 engine having some issues? Like, isn't that what caused a few delays?
I don't seem to recall that there were any like major delays aside from maybe like the Yoshi game, which good feel is using Unreal Engine 4.4, but like they just did that State of Unreal at GDC last week, and they seem to be going whole hog with it. Hell, they're putting Ark Survival Evolved on the Switch, which runs like a slideshow on every other platform, so it's not like the Switch could be much worse for it.
Is it possible they just don't have a team set up in Square Enix, you think? That
I would think at this point, given that that the PS like the main programming for this for PS4 and 3DS versions of Dragon Quest XI was done last year. Like they wrapped that game, it shipped in July. So at this point, I would think if they were doing any work on it prior to Switch launch, like prior to when they started development on the other games, because those only got announced in 2015, then I would think they would be at least most of the way there and wouldn't need to wait until 2019, unless they're planning on doing like a simultaneous localization, which is entirely possible.
yeah. I'm also curious if they hit roadblocks, maybe that. I mean, at the same time, like, I don't know, when you think of the opportunity of sales comparatively, like if they're not selling the West as it is, then they're kind of looking at, okay, how many Switches are in Japan right now? Maybe they're doing the numbers and saying, you know what's the rush?
Well, the Switch just crossed 4 million in Japan, according to Famitsu, in 13 months. The PS4, even with Dragon Quest XI and Monster Hunter World there, is only at about 5.5. So, assuming those rates hold, it's entirely possible that the Switch could be the biggest console system in Japan by the end of the year.
Yeah, I feel like based on the little bit I know about Japanese culture, that most of the people over there who play video games would prefer to play this Dragon Quest game on a Switch because of the portability of it all.
Yeah, I mean, granted my Dragon Quest backlog is quite belligerent at this point, but I mean, I've got 5 through 8 that I still have to play through. But yeah, I would definitely prefer to play like a 70, 80 hour RPG like Dragon Quest XI on a portable system because it's way easier to handle than tying myself up in front of the TV for that length of time to try and beat a massive game. I haven't been able to do that, I think, since Persona 5.
No, I absolutely agree. I mean, a lot of my problems with the Wii U in the end were I just couldn't get in front of the TV all the time. So a lot of those longer games I'd never beat. And Nintendo Switch has changed that for me. So I understand that pain quite a bit. I never would have gotten through Xenoblade 2 if it weren't for Switch.
Yeah, and I can attest to the fact that playing Xenoblade 2 off TV was painful. Or not Xenoblade 2, sorry, Xenoblade Chronicles X. Great game, but you needed the TV for it because the text was unreadable otherwise.
It was unreadable on my 55-inch TV.
Yeah, I was just gonna say the same. I had to stand in front of my TV to read some of that stuff. Well, and that was the other thing when they're talking about, because I picked it up used, but I was a little worried that, are they going to do a port on the Switch? But then I started thinking, man, they're going to have to change all that text if they think they're going to get it on the Switch.
Yeah, they'd like, what do you mean, Xenoblade X or?
Yeah, like Xenoblade X, like the text is so small you'd never like it. It wouldn't be like, to me. It's like you're not going to be able to straight port it. You're going to have to optimize it for the Switch. So you got all like that text, like you're going to have to come up with new UI or something because it's
and you're going to have
tough to play.
Yeah, and some of that as well, you're going to have to. It's going to fundamentally change how the game is played, just because there was a lot of times when you were doing like map. You could do map navigation, or you could do like the meta game of the world building on the gamepad while the action was still going on the TV. So they're going to have that Xenoblade X would probably end up being like a remake at this point if they tried to bring that over to Switch, which I really hope they do.
I prefer the original be brought over, but
at the rate we're going, we'll probably end up getting both anyway.
Yeah, that'd be nice.
Unless they're just focused on new stuff. It's hard to. I'm sure there's people that would pay for the old stuff, but they're not a huge company either, though.
Yeah. Okay. Getting back to Dragon Quest here. Dale in the chat room is saying that Sony money had a Dragon Quest. Chat room, can you tell me if Sony still owns a portion of Square Enix? Because I recall reading that they had picked some of that up. I think like they had some Square stock from around the late 90s when Square was in trouble after Spirits Within. But I don't like if they don't have like if they still have that relationship, that might go part of the way to explaining it, but I don't think it fully does.
Yeah, I don't know much
No.
about that situation.
Well, I mean, at the same time, the other flagship stuff is like it doesn't seem like they're too worried about getting Final Fantasy 15 on Switch either.
Well, let's let them finish Final Fantasy 15 first, because that game is going to have DLC probably going into the next decade, and then we can worry about that, and the still will be in development at the end of the decade, Kingdom Hearts 3. Yeah. The other big story out of this, I suppose, is the fact that the 3DS version, which is sort of the most unique version of Dragon Quest XI, isn't getting localized at all. I don't know if this is just a side effect of the fact that Square Enix would be publishing it, and I can count the number of games that Square Enix actually published on 3DS themselves on one hand. But it's kind of a shame that we're not going to get that version, because it was the best selling. It's a portable, and you could play it like a real old school Dragon Quest, or do sort of the 16-bit style graphics similar to what you saw with the other games on DS and 3DS.
Yeah, well, I looked up the sales for in the West for their last two, like 8 and 7. So in 2017, they only sold 130,000 copies in North America, and in 2016, they only sold 120,000 copies of 7 in North America. So I'm sure that's
yeah, as
large
opposed
on minds, you know.
Yeah, although in fairness, Dragon Quest VIII was like a January game for the 3DS, so it was like one of the 10 best-selling games on the system for a few months. And also this time, they didn't pack in a demo for a Final Fantasy game with it, which is I think it was a long way to explaining why Dragon Quest VIII was the most successful Dragon Quest outside Japan before 9 came along.
I also wonder how much localization comes into it, because I believe Dragon Quest VIII was the one that was localized by Richard Honeywood, and was generally well received as a strong localization. But now that he's over at level 5 and they're doing their own stuff, you wonder how much, like, finding someone else to do the localization or trying to do it in-house, if it's just not.
Well,
it's a bit too big a task for what they got right now or something.
Well, because they'd be localized in the PS4 version anyway, and like you can literally in Japan, if you had both versions of the game, you could actually jump back and forth between them with a password. Since Nintendo and Sony are never going to implement cross save for anything with each other, they actually had a system where you could pick up your progress, you could play one on the go, and then you come home, you could put a password in, and you would jump your progress there on the PS4 version. So, like, my understanding is like the plots are identical, and the only thing that might have to be localized is the voice work, which they could easily leave out of a 3DS version if it came to that.
Yeah, I was just wondering about the voice acting. Like, there obviously is voice acting in 8, I guess, because I've never personally played it, so I don't know.
There is a bit of voice acting. I think they were able to use most of it from the existing PS2 version.
Okay.
Whereas with 11, they're recording it anyway, but that would probably balloon for a game this size. Would probably balloon the file size beyond the point of usability on 3DS, because there is sort of a hard cap of about 4 gigs.
Yeah, that makes sense, because if they're using PS2 audio, it would already be low.
Yeah, it'd be pretty compressed, and it's not like you'd have to duplicate it or anything, because it's on it would be on a cartridge or a reasonably sized download. I think 7 is a even longer game, and that was only like 15,000 blocks on 3DS, which is like 2 gigs. But does the fact that it's the 3DS in 2018, aside from Atlas, who will support systems beyond the point of sanity? Look at Persona 4 2008 on the PS2. Is that the reason why it's like Square never trusted 3DS to begin with, it seems, and they just are stepping away from 3DS altogether now?
It's because 3DS fans, if you want an RPG in 2019, Nintendo's got you covered.
Nintendo and also Atlas probably with Persona Q2. So that's a nice bit of dungeon crawling there.
Yeah, I mean, that's another possibility too. Like, you think of all the Atlas games that are on there that are already kind of giving you your fill of JRPG. Maybe they just see the market is saturated and don't want to compete with them.
That could be it as well, but I mean, Dragon Quest XI has been in high demand, and I know there's a lot of people who were disappointed at the lack of a portable version of the game, but then again, that is also like the main audience who probably bought 7 and 8, and hell, he probably bought Dragon Quest 6.
But would that audience rather wait for a Switch version or have a 3DS version?
I think they just want to play it and would want to play it portably, so they would take whatever they would get, probably. If
whatever came out first, I guess.
Yeah, God forbid if there was a Vita version. Hell, I'd buy it. As it is, I'm probably going to wait for... I might have a PC that can play it at some point, but I'm sort of weaning myself off the PS4 now, so I just need the YouTube app. Come on, Nintendo, hook me up on Switch, and then I can probably sell my PS4, in all honesty. Yeah, and Joe in the chat saying that Atlas games on 3DS take like $5 to make. Dude, have you played any Atlas games on 3DS?
Yeah,
there is real production that goes into those games.
Yeah, especially I know there's a lot of Atlas like remakes that come out, but I mean that costs money. Like the Radiant Historia, they brought back the old director. They hired new artists to come up with new artwork. So
they recorded what?
It's not just a street.
And they recorded what, 90% of the dialogue in the game, like full voice acting.
Yeah, there's a lot. Yeah, full voice acting, and then they did the same thing coming up with Shin Megami Tensei: Strange Journey. So that would have cost a few bucks. And then Alliance Alive is technically, like, I'm sure they used the same engines from Legend of Legacy, but Alliance Alive is still in itself an original story.
Yeah. So I don't think it's kind of being a little disingenuous with Atlas there, but Griffix says you can play every main Dragon Quest game on a Nintendo handheld. Why stop now? That is true, and you can play all of them on 3DS if you have a Japanese one, but it'd be really nice if that was brought over.
Hey,
well, listen to Corey there. Yeah, well, yeah, it could still come to portable. Switch. But the guy in charge there, Hori, he the way he worded it, it certainly sounded like it was just, we looked at the money and it wasn't there.
All right. But speaking of waste of money, let's talk about E3 for a minute. Because last week, I know this is old, but we haven't had a chance to talk about it yet because it could lead to some other things. Nintendo released the first bit of their plans for E3 this year. And there's going to be a couple of tournaments, much like they had last year with Splatoon 2, Pokken, and ARMS, all pre-release. This year they'll be having a Splatoon 2 World Championship and a Smash Brothers for Switch tournament on the 11th and 12th. They haven't said which one is which, like which tournament will be on which day, but yeah, they're going to be blowing out Smash for Switch for the first time publicly. When do we think those are going to come up? Because I'm trying to think if there's a time slot on the Monday, even with Ubisoft going a bit earlier than they normally do for their Dog and Pony show before Sony's. Do they have enough time to squeeze it in that little block between the two of them?
Does Nintendo need to care about the other blocks? I mean, they're just going to be streaming it themselves.
Well, if they go to if this goes on too late in the evening, nobody's going to watch. Most of the, instead of putting the attention onto their game, they could be watching the Sony, whatever they do for a press conference this year. So the only time I could think of would be I don't know, 3 Pacific or something, 6 Eastern for one of them, and that one you probably do Splatoon, and then you do Smash after you've had a chance to reveal some more people, because presumably they'll be doing their video presentation Tuesday morning, the same as they've done since 2012, at least.
Would it be wise of Nintendo to maybe put the Smash stuff on when Sony or Microsoft has their press conference to draw eyes away from it?
They could, but I don't. But the only one that they'd be because Microsoft's is actually on Sunday this year, like it was last year. So they don't have so they can't really counter program that. Plus, they actually talk about the Switch at Microsoft's press conference when Minecraft comes up. So, they may want to keep the attention on that. I mean, they could attempt to counter program Sony, but I don't think it's going to work. I think they try to either get it in before, or you do it in the old Microsoft Monday morning slot, 9:30 in the morning. Because then you might actually get some people staying up in Japan to watch it too.
Yeah, I don't know what's going to happen with it. I think last year the tournaments are actually done in Nintendo's booth.
Yeah, they were done in Nintendo's booth, and they were during what would normally have been Treehouse Live time.
Yeah, so I'm assuming they're going to do that again. I personally think that's bad for people going to the show. It just makes me want to go to the show less, which is sad because I love E3 and all the changes they've been doing with letting the public in, and having these tournaments in Nintendo's booth takes away from the actual experience someone going to the show is going to have there, because you're not going to watch a tournament at E3. You want to try some games, and that just takes up booth space that would usually or presumably be used to put more demos out there to make it less crowded overall, because people will get to play what they want to play. But I think it's better when they did the whole separate tournaments over. Is that the Nokia Theater next door?
Which is ironically now the Microsoft Theater.
Yes, I mean, I keep forgetting that. I've gone to E3 for so long. It's always going to be the Nokia Theater to me. But
yeah, I would assume that they probably just copy last year's formula, it worked for them, and I would imagine that they're more worried about the people at home than the people there.
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, if you're press, you've got a few hours before the masses get in there. I think they actually sold less tickets this year than they did last year, so it won't be as much of a gong show as last year's was, where that was the first one that was actually open to the public. And I mean, they're not going to have Odyssey in there to draw eyes, so I'm trying to think what could be the game. Yeah, but that means yeah. If Smash is the big game, you get 4 people to a booth.
Yeah, but let me tell you, I was there for Smash. What was it, 2014?
Yeah,
Smash for Wii U, and a lot of people wanted to play Smash. And sure, the lines move quickly because they'd have 4 people play 2 matches. I think there may be 3-minute matches each, something like that, time matches, and rotate you out. But there's a lot of people who want to play Smash, and people are getting back in line to keep playing Smash. So there were a lot of units on the floor, and there were lines for all of them, except the 3DS lines weren't that long, but still, there were still lines for that.
Yeah, I remember going to one of the Best Buy events that year, and I've actually got a Smash Brothers title belt over my wall here, and they it was about an hour for us to actually get in there and play it. So yeah, I kind of see what you mean. Now, when they did that exhibition Smash tournament in 2014, like it was what, Tuesday night after the show floor had closed?
I forget what day, but it was. I believe it was immediately after the show floor closed. Actually, it may have been before the show floor closed, and I say that because it was definitely before the show floor closed. Because Jonathan Metz and I went, and we left the tournament a few minutes early and rushed back over to E3, the convention centers, and tried to get back in, and they weren't letting us in because we had to go to a after hours media event where Sakurai, I guess, was being interviewed, and that's where they showed Pac-Man was playable for the first time.
Sort of like those developer events that they used to have there
Yes.
up until they used one on Codename Steam, and that did not go over well, as I recall.
Yeah, that was 2015, I believe. But yeah, the Smash Brothers one was pretty good. And I think I asked a question to Sakurai about balancing and how terrible it was in Brawl and what they were doing to make it better in this game, because that was actually a huge concern of mine going into Smash Brothers for Wii U, because if you remember Brawl, that game was horribly unbalanced. Meta Knight is a god, and the whole game suffered because of all the problems with that.
I'm surprised Sakurai didn't blow you off, considering, well, Meta Knight's probably his boy anyway.
Well, yeah, but he had actually a long answer to that, and I think he claimed only like 4 people balanced Brawl, and they had 12 or something mainly working on the balance for Smash Brothers for Wii U/3DS. Probably even more than that. Who knows? But yeah, I'm sure you can go look that question up, as there were many media people in the room. But yeah, that was definitely before the show floor closed.
Yeah, because I remember, like, I was working late. I was working my usual late shifts at that point, and so I came home and I got a chance to see Mega Man debut his final Smash, and the entire roof come off the building. That I think that was forget 2013 Sony. I think that was the moment that said, yeah, okay, E3's done.
Yeah, is that when Sakurai did that match with Trinan? Was it?
No, I think it was because I remember seeing the video, and it's often set to songs from anime, but basically it was one of the exhibition matches with 4 players in there, and then Mega Man got the Smash Ball, and then he fired, and the place exploded. Like, somebody won a world title level pop for that.
You think there's a character out there that would generate that kind of buzz at this point?
The Ice Climbers, without doubt. Me alone.
Justin, I'd love to hear you.
Roof will get blown.
Yeah. Justin, Sakurai says, yeah, the Ice Climbers are coming, and his head explodes.
Yeah, either way, no matter what happens, you'll hear a loud scream.
Yeah, whether it's joy or anguish. I mean, they've got the Inklings in there. They've already played that card. I can't really think of anything short of, like, Snake coming back, which will never happen. Because
I think Snake could come back.
I wonder if the big reveal will be like Springman, but people will kind of be like, yeah.
I don't expect an ARMS playable character. I'm expecting an ARMS assist trophy.
And crowd goes apathetic. Actually, no. I think I figured it out, but that will never happen. Goku.
No, it's going to be King K. Rool.
Yeah. So we'll see. We'll find out more about Nintendo, what Nintendo's plans are for E3 itself over the next few weeks. We'll probably know by. I hope we don't stretch it to the end of May like they did last year.
They're stretching it, Donald. Be realistic.
Yeah. But at least 2 years ago, when I was actually scheduled to go to E3, until they said, yeah, we're only showing one game, you might as well just stay. Like, don't fly anybody in who doesn't have to.
Nintendo doesn't care about your feelings.
Thankfully, I had not booked my plane ticket, or else I'd be having some words with Nintendo. But then again, did they really have all that much to show in 2016, realistically?
Yeah. No, that was a bad year.
Yeah. A good year to home team it. this year, probably the same. Yeah. So other quick hits from this week. I hope you bought your points for the Wii Shop Channel because, well, that shut down Monday. At least the adding points part, there was a maintenance, and when it came back, the option was literally gone. So yeah, I freely admit that I bought about $180 worth of stuff off the Wii Shop on Saturday. I meant because I understood the limit to be $100. So it's like I have to clear out the wallet anyway to make sure I get everything I want. You know what? Screw it. Let's just buy it all. So I ended up with like 3 TurboGrafx games, a few Super Nintendo games that haven't come to Wii U, some rare NES games, and a whole bunch of WiiWare, including all the Rebirth games, and I finally picked up Yumi and the Cubes. So I meant to play that for the retroactive on RFN, but just totally forgot.
Yeah, I kind of did that a few years ago because I bought a ton of points on cards and just never used them. And I think around when the Wii U came out, I'm like, you know what? I better just go through this and spend them before I forget. And I bought a ton of stuff back then. But a lot of those cards came from Toys R Us when they were retiring the old style cards. They were, I think, maybe like 30% off. So I just bought a ton of them.
Damn, no wonder Toys R Us went under.
Yeah, well, yeah. Well, if you remember the old style of cards, it was a little bit different. They came in like the bubble packaging where you had to cut them open. It was a real pain to actually do that. And yeah, they retired that whole thing because I think all of those may have been preloaded in advance. I don't think they were scanned at the register type thing.
Yeah, and they only sold them in the 2,000 point quantities, if I'm remembering correctly.
Yeah, that's all they had here anyway. I don't know about in other regions, or Japan may have had other options. But yeah, it was 2,000 point cards, and I could be wrong, but I think they may have come preloaded, so it wasn't like cards now where once they get scanned at the register and paid for, that's when they really get loaded up on the system. So if you can't go in there and steal a handful of cards and get hundreds of dollars worth of credit.
Yeah, that seems like a bit of a security hole that I think the retailers are glad Nintendo patched.
Yeah, but when they're trying to get rid of those, that's when they went on sale.
Yeah,
and replace them, which I jumped on.
Yeah, good. You chose wisely, as it turned out.
Yeah.
So just so I'm sure here, the limit for what the shop could have held was $100, right? Or 10,000 points? Or
I don't even know.
Yeah, because that's So David, did you take one last chance to load up, or were you satisfied with what you had and you're good?
No, I was pretty good. I had heard what some of the lists of things to get, so then I was like, yeah, I'm all right. It's tough because I have like the backlog is long to begin with. Like, it's not often in my life I've had video games still in an original plastic packaging that I still need to play, and now it's starting to pile up. So I'm thinking of a bunch of games on my Wii. I'm gonna just kind of let that go for now.
You didn't do the transfer to your Wii to a Wii U or anything?
I think I transferred to my Wii U, but I haven't really touched the Wii U in a while either.
You guys didn't stock up on my Pokemon Ranch?
I bought that at launch. I'm not proud of it, especially since the method to getting Mew is complete BS.
I'm not proud of many things I bought on WiiWare.
Muscle March?
Oh, I bought Muscle March. I have Sexy Poker. I got all the classics.
Boy.
And definitely Arkanoid, my favorite Square Enix franchise.
Arkanoid Returns.
Arkanoid Plus, yeah, whatever they call it.
Yes, Hacker alias Dave Bird 1 in the chat. He had an interesting question here. Please name one remake you'd want from each Nintendo generation. Oh boy.
Do we have time for that?
That'll probably take us to the end of the show.
Yeah, I'd have to really think about that.
Okay.
Nintendo published or Nintendo game?
I think the assumption is Nintendo published, but
Because being the RPG aficionado, I still want to get Final Fantasy the original on the Switch.
like FF1.
Yeah, like I still play that game even now. Like I don't know why. It's like an illness, or I just enjoy it. I don't know why.
Well, if the Switch does well enough, maybe Square will move like the mobile port that's based on the GBA game. Several generations are moved over.
Yeah, I just I figured it might be a good candidate for the online catalog or whatever they're gonna do. Like I know it's not a Nintendo published, but I'm sure they're gonna have a few other games that aren't necessarily Nintendo published. Hopefully, I don't know. Maybe not.
Yeah. Talking NES, its only real answer is Donkey Kong Jr. Math.
I was gonna suggest an HD remake of Popeye, but if you want to go down that road,
and if a more serious answer off the top of my head, I'd like to see what they do with Joy Mech Fight, which we never got. I never got to play it. I'd love to see some sort of remake of that.
maybe like an open world take on Mock Rider.
Oh yeah.
With as required by site law, Captain Falcon as an unlockable character for your open world F-Zero.
Maybe Mock Rider is like the Captain Falcon origin story.
If you're talking N64, I wouldn't mind seeing an HD remake of Blast Corps.
I thought the version that like the rare replay version was already in HD. Griffin in the chat saying he wants original Paper Mario on 3DS, which okay, yeah, I could be down with that. Because I mean, maybe Mario Party 1, see if modern analog sticks can handle the some of those mini games.
No. Mario Party's banned at my house for that reason on N64.
and that's why the Virtual Console started with 2. I don't know. It's hard to say. I mean, Super Nintendo, I want to go really wacky with this. Like, I want like Intelligent Systems maybe do like a downloadable version of the like Battle Clash and Metal Combat. You could do that. I mean, it would have been perfect for the Wii because you could do it with the Wii remotes. But now, I suppose you could use the infrared pointer on the Joy-Con.
Metal Combat was awesome. I really like that.
Yeah, and it had Battle Clash in it, so you were set for that. So yeah, that probably not what most people were expecting me to pick from the Super Nintendo, but hey, it's still Intelligent Systems. Or if we really want to get wacky, get Game Freak in and do Mario and Wario. That Japan only adventure game where Mario's wearing a bucket on his head the whole game.
Doesn't that use the SNES mouse or something?
Yes, it was a mouse game.
You know, Mario Paint would be a good one if we're talking mouse games.
Yeah, and hey, that's another one for the IR pointer on the Joy-Cons.
Yep.
Hey, I'd buy a Switch mouse if it means I never have to touch my Switch screen again. I'm not a proponent of touchscreen technology like for video games. I don't want my fingerprints in my face. You
want one of these?
No, maybe. I don't even like just no touch capacity whatsoever. It didn't need it. That's my opinion.
Although make some of those Satellaview exclusives, I want to play those.
Like the Satellaview Zelda.
Yeah.
Oh, wait. Actually, yeah. Now that I think about it, there is probably going to be a remake of a very rare late Super Famicom game in the next couple of years. Fire Emblem Thracia 776.
Let's bring back King Griffey Jr. while we're at it. Let's bring him out of retirement. Let's get Griffey back here.
Dude's in the Hall of Fame, and don't forget, Nintendo doesn't have like the majority share in the Mariners anymore.
They got some of it, but not the majority. But they got some. They can talk to the right people here. I mean, we want Griffey back. Who doesn't want Griffey back? You know, let me know.
Yeah, except I think he came back last year in MLB The Show. He sold out to Sony.
Isn't it left, left, right, 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 left, left on the 64 ones? You just hit a home run every time. It's great. MVP.
I always wanted to play them because the Jays were actually decent at that point. Unlike this year. Well, yeah, and I don't know, GameCube generation. Maybe Monolith Soft can sort of stretch their legs, when they're not doing giant robots or giant worlds. Maybe go back and let's get Baten Kaitos Origins back, like the last GameCube game. Not counting Twilight Princess.
GameCube, I don't know. It's a little more difficult. Trying to think.
I'd play that game.
Yeah, I don't think it had as much of the card stuff as the original one did, and it's a prequel, so it probably do well as a standalone story anyway.
Yeah, I heard it was less dependent on. I believe James was describing the difference between the first one and the second one. About in the first one, you'd have your deck of cards, and if you switch characters, the cards that you potentially had would no longer be used. They could not be used with the character that you switched to.
If I had to pick one from GameCube, let's go F-Zero.
Yeah. Lolnox in the chat suggests Geist. I don't think the developer of that even exists anymore. So
you don't want Geist. You don't want that. Don't stop.
And Carl Castaneda just suggested Killer 7. So there's a lot of candidates. Like we've got Mario Galaxy already on a Switch-like platform. Just you have to go to China for it. I guess original Xenoblade or hell, Last Story, because you could actually have the online stay up for longer than 2 years.
Yeah, Xenoblade would be a good one. Other than it would make the one I just bought redundant, which is a personal. It'd be a personal front, but I guess everybody else would be happy with it.
Yeah. And maybe it would keep Shulkin Smash. And well, we already talked about with like either Xenoblade Chronicles X or Tokyo Mirage Sessions, because let's face it, everything else is already getting ported to Switch.
Let's also bring Pokemon Channel.
Didn't that game get a 2 from us? Like at that point, you're into Longrisser territory.
I'm okay with bringing some ridiculous games back. I mean, the world needs more Pokemon Channel.
I just want to point out that not even 5 days ago, we got a Detective Pikachu game. I think we're covered for weird Pokemon spin-offs for a while.
I'm sure Pokemon Snap could be figured out on the Switch.
And I do want No Mercy updated. Come on, guys. I know it's not Nintendo published. Give it to me.
Yeah. Well, I mean, Sin Sophia, they've done a lot of work with Nintendo before.
I know. It's so close.
You'd have to talk to 2K to actually convince them to make a wrestling game that isn't complete dog crap.
I don't even care if it has the WWEF whatever license. Just make me a wrestling game again, Sin Sophia.
Actually, they could I remember, like, I always read those FAQs where you could replace the wrestlers in that game with modern ones. You could just replace, the guy who committed the murder-suicide with Daniel Bryan, and there you go. That's 90% of the work done for avoiding the legal fees, at least.
Yeah, I mean, if you go there's a ton of mod communities built around that game, and there's some crazy things people have been able to do with that, and that's just modding the game. I mean, taking some of the basic formula, a talented team could probably do some amazing work with that. I'd love to see it. I really want a new game in that series.
I still prefer that game to anything that's been made in the last 15 years.
There's a reason for that. It's because aside from like 1 or 2 of the SmackDown games, every non-Fire Pro wrestling game that's come out in the last 15 years has been not that good to in some cases dumpster fire. See WWE 2K18 on Switch. And Dale asked in the chat room, what's this about Galaxy in China? Because Nvidia has to deal with Nintendo for the Switch chips, they actually licensed Mario Galaxy to be sold on like Chinese app stores for gaming, for their set-top gaming boxes, and they've actually mapped the waggle to a button.
Yeah, it looks like they were using a stick maybe to actually aim the pointer on like the video I saw of it, the trailer or whatever.
Yeah.
Because the star pointer would stay in place and sometimes just move. It wasn't nearly as shaky as it would have been if an actual human is holding a Wii remote.
Yeah. So yeah, that is a thing. Don't look for it to leave China, because I'm sure Nintendo would want a beaucoup de bucks for that.
Yeah, I'd love to get a shield just to get some of that stuff, but
yeah. And so Nintendo's just licensing out games now. I don't think we're going to see anything else from this deal. I think it was just more of a, I don't know if it was more of a proof of concept or just a side effect of the Nintendo Nvidia partnership. But I don't recall them announcing any other games in that line. So
like Donald said, don't expect this ever to leave China. Really, or a country like China, I guess. It
was the only way they could get in, I believe.
Yeah, because unless you are basically the richest company on the planet, i.e. Apple, you need to pay a lot of money or have a Chinese subsidiary in order to do any business in China. That's just the way it is. All right. This is the path that leads to the CDI. One of Gamelon 2. Here we come. Okay, I think with that, we are going to shut this thing down. Thank you very much for watching or listening. We are here most weeks on YouTube, youtube.com/NinWRTV. There'll be an article on the mothership, NintendoWorldReport.com, every week when we go up, usually on Thursdays lately, but always subject to change depending on the winds of the news. If you want to support the site that supports us, you can go to patreon.com/NWR, chip in a few bucks, and eventually at some point we'd like to be able to get rid of the ads on the website, and Patreon box will help with that. But for now, I believe we owe them a game show at some point. Although I believe we're also doing that next week at PAX.
Two birds with one stone this time, right?
Yep. Yeah, so, and as mentioned, next week we'll be at PAX East. Neil, Alex will be there, along with some of the other NWR crew, including the Talk Nintendo podcast, which just went up today. As you're hearing this, or as of recording date, they'll be doing Who Wants to Be a Nintendo-Heir? I have not written any of the questions this year, so good luck. And we will also be holding a nice little party for the Switch. I hear there may be goodies involved. So Nintendo-Heir will be Friday, and the birthday party will be on Sunday. Check your local PAX schedule for date, time, and availability. For those who want to hang out with us individually, David, you are at Filtered Gamer, and I believe you also have another show.
Yeah, they started up a podcast about a little over a month ago now, called The Thirsty Mage, which is dedicated to all things RPG. So we've got the first one was a show dedicated to Xenoblade Chronicles 2. And then the next one we've done is Radiant Historia, Persona 5. And we also did a 4-panel review of Alliance Alive. So that's all on iTunes. If you just Google, or not Google, if you search iTunes, the podcast, just put in The Thirsty Mage or Nintendo World Report. It's in with the list there too, so you can subscribe. And if there's any listeners that have already listened and you enjoyed the show, a nice review would be very helpful to get the show off its feet. So if you've got the time and you enjoyed the show, that'd be great.
Indeed, I'd love to get on that. I just need it to not be, having giant nor'easters, which I think should be stopping soon. So I might actually be able to get on for an episode.
Yeah, and that'd be because you're a big JRPG fan yourself.
Yeah, Yes. So Justin is on Twitter at King Nintendo Fan. Go there for all your Nintendo merchandise nerdery and also Ice Climbers fanboyism.
Oh yeah, I'll be there to talk to you about anything Nintendo, really. But I do a lot of Nintendo collecting. If you don't know me, so hit me up, ask me questions. I'll try to answer.
And I'm on Twitter at Donald Mick. Go there for my latest luck or lack thereof in certain mobile games, as well as quick news and analysis when I can remember to fire it off. And the website itself is at Nintendo_NWR. Follow that for stray thoughts and also all of our content.
And join our Discord. Yeah, don't forget Discord.
Yes.
To find that, go to NintendoWorldReport.com and click chat on the top banner. It's the easiest way to find it.
Yeah. Or if you're watching this on YouTube, the link is in the description, along with the link to the Patreon and the Mothership website itself. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good night. Bye-bye.
Later.
Night.